A game has recently come out and it's become an immediate hit, and I'm glad it has. Um, and I want to play it on here just kind of for memes, but also just because I think that the game brings up very interesting topics. Um, the game is called Getting Over It, and I think it's hilarious. The concept of it, the game play is fun, but the concept and the reasoning behind making the game, I think is pretty cool. One, but also like very. I think it's very in line with what I think. So I included this quote. It's Friedrich Nietzsche. Uh, I think he's kind of an idiot, so I thought it'd be memes just to, everybody always throws quotes in for some reason. They're like, here's a quote from someone I think is smart. But, yeah, fuck that, so, alright. So let's figure this out. Game's a little loud. Alright. So this is as simple as the gameplay is. You're a dude in a cauldron, and you gotta climb up this mountain with this hammer. I named the hammer Josh. He looks like a Josh, I don't know. But yeah, you gotta do some Herculean feats here, man. But either way, the reason why a game like this has been created. Alright, that's creator. Whenever you fuck up, he gives you quotes as pseudo encouragement. They're really just trying to piss you off, I think. He made this game to challenge a group of people. People who get, over emotional at shit like this. I'm not one of them, but I still find the game so much fun. Just because I like the physics engine, I like the concept behind it. So the concept is basically people get really mad at games like this. So he made it to torment them. And like it's pretty neato. Cause if you're just okay, you get pretty good after like an hour. Oh. Now Donkey made a video on it, and Donkey's just the kind of person, so seeming, that this is targeted for. Also, it plays really annoying music, and I think that's really just on the basis of he knows it will tilt you. Because, oh man, does it get on my nerves. Oh. So it's now 2018. We got a whole bunch of stuff going on. Not really. I mean, California's tried to do some bullshit with freedom of speech. So apparently a guy attacked a Muslim church group, not a mosque, but a community center for Muslims, I guess. And so, the way it works is in America, if you start bullying a specific person, it's illegal. You start calling someone out for being a barbarian, for being Muslim, that's not free speech. Now, if you attack an ideology, you're fine. You're Guccio. You're Guccio Gu. But you're not allowed to attack a specific person. So, this man did not attack a specific person, but California's trying to get him for something. I think it's harassment. Well, he messaged him until they blocked him, and then he stopped. So, like, there's not even really too much of a basis to declare that that's harassment either. Now, that in itself is a little concerning. You know, not that California's ever been the most constitutional. It's kind of a shit state when you think about it. Sure, they got pot, but like they got everything else wrong. People are fleeing because of how many, like, the issue with Californians, as I see it, is that they vote for a whole bunch of tax things. Like, you know, they're like, we want social benefits, and then they get the social benefits, and then they're like, oh wow, that really raised their taxes. Well, we're gonna leave now, and then they go to like other states, and then vote for the same shit. And then they leave like, they're just like, they're going to Texas, I think. Like Austin and shit. And it's like, whew. You need to stop. People so often now don't realize, like, with the whole Bernie thing, with the whole free college and such, like, people don't understand that when you vote for free, like, I think, you know, the quote, you know, there's no such thing as a free lunch, very relevant here, because you can't actually get like free college. It's just, you know, all paid for by the taxpayers. And so when you start actually supporting that, then your taxes go up, and you're like, whoa. I didn't ask for my taxes to go up, and it's like, well, you kind of did. But, you know. They're like, well, I'm going to go get a degree for free in, like, art history, and then I'm going to, you know, have no money. And we're just going to see how that goes. And then, you know, they go and they get their free degree in art history, and they're like, I can't make any money, so now I need welfare. Because no one incentivized me to get a profitable degree, because I'm not in debt for my degree now. And you can't tax me because I make no money. And I'm getting food stamps. So it's a win-win-win, you know? They got to study in art history, you know, probably got to drink and hoe around in college, and now they're there. And I'm not saying that only women get, you know, art history degrees. Plenty of men do, and they hoe around in college too. You know, equal opportunity hoeing. Sargon said something in a stream recently, and it's been on my mind. He said, I don't know if we should make selfishness a virtue. And it's like, I can understand where he's coming from. It's very, you know, it's a pretty, you look at his, you know, how he feels about economic things, and he says, oh, I don't want to make selfishness a virtue, and it immediately makes sense. I mean, he's, you know, center left. Who'd have thought? But, you know, I do have to disagree. I think that, you know, it should be a virtue. But he immediately kind of disagreed with himself. Well, adding a caveat, I guess, but it's like, it wasn't so much a caveat when, like, it was in essence, like, it was immediately correct. He was like, well, I mean, if I'm, you know, when people are, you know, selfish, you know, about, like, something like human rights, or not human rights, but universal rights, my bad, I misspoke. He said, you know, when I advocate for my own universal rights, you I'm advocating for your universal rights as well, when I'm advocating for my family's human right, or universal rights, goodness me, I'm also advocating for everyone else's, you know? And so it was like, I am, without being a collectivist, I am arguing for the collective. I'm helping my collective man. And it's like, well, yeah, that's true. And objectivism admits that. You know, so if you're looking out for yourself, you're saying, one day I can be unemployed, so I should get unemployment insurance, which used to be a thing before welfare. So, you know, people used to pay into like an insurance so that if ever they were unemployed, you know, they'd still get money until they found a new job. And so plenty of people were paying into this system. And it was great, because like you had a whole bunch of money, and like you had people who were like, if I were to lose my job, I'd be dicked, so I'm gonna pay some money into a group. And so together, we'll, you know, if anybody, you know, gets unemployed, laid off, you know, we can weather the storm together, such that, you know, I might get a little bit of help from someone else, but, you know, if someone else, you know, bears the same consequence. See, and this is where I believe that it is trying to tilt you, because I haven't fallen. I haven't fallen. I haven't fucked up yet. Too bad. Alright. This is a very delicate jump. Alright, nope, messed it up. Alright, well, I think I can do something like this. Alright. So, like, when people always think, and, like, I was having a conversation with a buddy, and you know, I noticed this, and I pointed it out to him, and he agreed. People, you know, who live, like, regular modern lives, think that the government has a monopoly on charity. And they don't. I mean, we have plenty of private charities. But when it comes to something like welfare, thinking about the children, you know, people always think like, oh, well, you know, the government will just pay for it. And it's like, yeah, but like, people would just pay for it. And you can see this, like, you know, this has been done plenty of times. You know, they're like, well, if, you know, the government wasn't there to, you know, do charity, would you support a charity? And it's like, of course. You know, if you know, Salvation Army, if you know what Goodwill is, you know, stuff like that. It's like, if ever I was, you know, too poor to afford clothing, I'd want options. So it's like, I can understand when people were like, you know, just doing that instead of using the government's options. It's like food stamps. Why you need food stamps when you can have a food bank? Food banks don't need to be, you know, paid for by the government. You know, you have one rich person, or people who are rich in an area and people who are poor in an area, and, you know, the rich will help out the poor because they, you know, they realize there's a sense of community, one, but also because, you know, that could have been them. And so they'd hope that in return one day, you know, if ever they go through economic hardship, that they'd get help. But I think a lot of people just think that there's just, you know, the government's the only one who will ever care about you. No, oh. And so it's like, I find that very troubling, because I think that, like, even though there's plenty of evidence to suggest that people would totally donate to charities, um that they don't ever think that it's actually like a viable option. And that's, I feel like it's partially because we're most people are socialized by not become becoming socialistic, but socialized, like, in the term of like politically socialized, knowing the state, loving the state and such, because you're getting taught by the state. And I like the way Aaron Brooks says it, where he says, the state is a necessary good so long as it's controlled. Once you get into territories where the government's overbearing because you have no control on it, sure, then it's a necessary evil. But I think that, literally the president of the Ayn Rand Society, or whatever, the Ayn Rand School of Philosophy, he has a very enlightened position on the government. And I agree with him full-heartedly. The government is a necessary good. It's a good thing. It organizes us, because I disagree with the Rothbardian ideal of anarcho-capitalism. Because, the issue with anarcho-capitalism is it requires it is effectively the same as anarcho-communism. You need everybody to believe it. And if you need everybody to believe it, it's bordering on totalitarian. Because how do you achieve everybody thinking the same way? And that's the issue that I see philosophically with the idea of anarcho-capitalism. Sure, it's a pretty idea, but I don't think it's at all practical or reasonable to ever guess that it happened, assume that it happened, be able to happen. And that's how I feel about communism. Not even anarcho-communism, but anarcho-communism is basically just communism, because it's... I don't understand why people talk about anarcho-communism, because the idea of communism is, by the end, that there will be no state. Now, some communists will even say that, I don't even get it. They're like, the Stalinists will always win. They'll say that, someone will always seize power and take it over. So it's like, well, why would you even advocate for something like that? If we can look at, like, an example of something as bad as Stalinism, it's like, whew, that's gross. You look at Stalinism, it was horrible. I mean, it was bad. You had people, look at Castro. Castro had a ton of money, even though his whole country was poor and put in work camps to pay for their education. But, like, and that's what communism, socialism, and all that shit will do, but, like, I think it's very upsetting that people don't, so I'm into robotics. So in high school I did something called FIRST. FIRST is for the inspiration and recognition of science and technology. And, I went, so I lived near DC. And so there's a international robotics competition, and alright, so one of the guys who founded it, he invented the Segway, and he's kind of rich, but also he said something that was very irking to me. He said, we should only teach science and math. And, like, sure, I'm going in for a math major, but it's like, I can understand that, except I really can't. He's like, history has caused all the world's problems. It's like, yeah, but you need to look at the past to understand the future. If we can't look at, like, I don't know, like, different, like, industrial, agricultural revolutions, we'll never, we can guess how shit will go come the advent of, like, I don't know, self-driving cars, taking out, most of the transport business. Because you know there's a ton of truck drivers, because there's a ton of trucks, because we need to transport shit. You know, and once Tesla, you know, eventually, or whoever else comes along, creates the self-driving semis, well, that's a lot of people out of work. And then even further, like, oh well, you know, they have like robots that can like flip burgers and shit. And you know, I see this as a revolution of workers, specifically like, I don't know, laborers. I mean, there's a robot that can lay bricks. There's plenty of robots can do, you know, shit that we think is really really tricky. You know, we have algorithms that are going to replace some jobs, and in a lot of places they already have. I mean, honestly, like in like the trading, like stock managing, you know, algorithms are already doing better than, you know, the actual stockbrokers, which is, you know, good and bad. Well, they're doing good. They're doing better spare like insider trading. And insider trading is a mess, but you know. And so like when we don't look at history and we just look towards the future, because that's where all of our bright young women are. You know, they don't say men. One of my gripes with a lot of robotics shit was that it was very blue pilled. It was very we need more women. Like, it was disgusting, because one of the memeiest things that you would see at any robotics competition was a team of all chicks, and most importantly, they would always say that they were diverse. And I'm like, that's not what that word means, sweetie, but that's just me mansplaining now, isn't it? But you know, you had a lot of cool inside quotes, because you know, I've never met more autists. Granted, I've never gone to like a meetup for anything like YouTube-y politically. Went to a 4chan meetup one time, and even they were more civil than the robotics kids. Goodness me, there were some fucking tists. And it's like, you know, it's all well and good. I made a lot of friends on the team. And interestingly enough, I live right outside of DC, so the area is pretty diverse. Live near a lot of Koreans and shit. You know, a lot of Indians, fair bit of Arabs. Not like proper Arabs, but like, you know, Islamic. You know, one of my best friends was Sudanese, North Sudan, but like, you know, because South Sudan's ridden with civil wars, and she was pretty cool. Granted, the thing about second gen Islamic people is like that they really don't believe it, and they really don't follow the rules, and they're all pretty chill. Up until, you know, they start feeling guilty for the US like bombing shit, and you know, then they're like, oh, what about my cousins who fucking died at the, you know, hands of like the like US drones. You know, and that's when they start getting a little crazy, a little cuckoo. But heck. Heckin' shucks, man. Alright, well, this game's really hard if it doesn't look like it is. It's a little tricky. But yeah, I mean, the problem with like a lot of you know, pro STEM shit right now is that, you know, just like in Google, they were like, well, we don't have 50-50. And that's something that, like, you know, alright, so because I live near DC, I also did something called NAC. Now that was also for robotics, and that was we went and lobbied, because you know a whole bunch of kids who are smart, you know, look pretty good to like a whole bunch of Congress people, and they want to take pictures with us and shit. You know, to look like they did shit. I guess I don't know. The Congress people were kind of assholes. They're all stupid. Well, granted, we didn't talk to any of the Congress people, but you know, they are all pretty dumb. I mean, they're pretty good at being politicians. And like, so I spoke with the, you know, my congresswoman and the two, well, I did speak with my congresswoman, but I also spoke, you know, with like the like some staffers of the two senators, and like basically, you know, we were advocating for a pretty shitty bill, but it was whatever. It was you know, it was basically just, hey, you should fund after school programs. Please appropriate funds for it. And it was like, no. After school programs should fund themselves or find charities to do it for them. And the companies do actually have plenty of, you know, well, because most companies like supporting the community because it makes them look good. It also makes people like them. So that's always pretty cool. You know, if you're like, wow, that company, you know, they went and they supported my kid's robotics competition or some shit, and you're like, okay, well maybe I'll, you know, even on the most subliminal level, you're like, maybe like if they're, you know, your parents are in the government or some shit, because you know a lot of them are, they might contract us or something or another. And that is it. Yeah, so what's really annoying about like doing robotics is like they're definitely like feminist ideologues inside of it. So you know they're talking about like like they talk about like feminism, talk about pride, and that was always really annoying, like gay pride and shit. Inside of a robotics competition, like the issue with intersectional feminism, which is often deemed as cultural Marxism, which it is, you know, they try to work identity into everything, and it just doesn't need to be there. I experience nothing for being a gay robotics kid. You know, because it doesn't come up. It doesn't make any sense to make it an issue when you're not doing anything relevant to that. Like it doesn't, like it's very frustrating being a not retarded lefty gay, because it's like you always get thrown into shit that you don't agree with. You know, I've heard people say, I can't believe that you're like conservative, which I'm not. I'm not like a Republican. I'm a libertarian. Modestly. Like not like hardly libertarian. No, I'm pretty libertarian, but I don't agree with the Libertarian Party. Like I'm not libertarian partisan. It's just that's how my politics line up. It's different from like the party, much like the like liberalism and like the modern corporatist, the like liberal corporate side of like the DNC. You know, few people are like actually liberal partisan, like towing the party line, but you know, my mother, you know, went and voted in the 2016 election and in the midterm in Virginia, and she said she was basically like, yeah, I came back and I I went there and I put all D's and then I left. And it was like, you didn't do any research, did you? No, I know which party I like. It's like, oh, Oh, that one hurt, man. Yeah, just oof. I think my mother is half the reason why I'm so like worried about politics, because like honestly, she watches MSNBC and doesn't, you know, she doesn't care about like validity or anything. She's just like, well, you know, I really like the people on there and I agree with them on everything. And it's like, that's because they're pandering to a base and you are the perfect demographic of the base. You know, I'm like, oh, we should do away with Social Security. And she's like, well, I've paid into it, so I deserve my fair share. And I'm like, no, I don't advocate for any more theft. I'm just saying that you shouldn't force people to pay into it. Especially when, you know, we're like in so far in debt that like, you know, we're like not even like, we're in debt on our Social Security. We're counting on like a whole bunch of people to pay into Social Security. You know, generations later. It's like, well, you know, I'm worried about, you know, I'm not really worried about the debt because it really seems inconsequential. It's lame. And if we go further in debt, it'll be a problem going forward because then no one will give us money. You know? No one's giving money to your uncle at Thanksgiving if he's like, I'll pay you back next time. And then he doesn't, and he doesn't, and then he asks for money again. You're like, hold up, you didn't even pay off the first one. And China's like, you know, going on and on, like, fuck it, yeah, sure, take more money. We'll own your whole fucking country, faggot. It's like, poof, please. Don't. You know, they own like fucking toll roads and shit in Texas and stuff. Not that it's concerning. I had a conversation one time with someone who was like, they shouldn't be able to do that. And it's like, well, really, they should. Someone wants to own land. And, like, if they own the road to do the toll roads on, then it's not much of a problem now, is it? Because they're paying for road maintenance with the fucking tolls. But, you know, they're making a profit. You know, everybody does. But, you know, people, I have issues with, like, I agree with ethno-nationalism. Like, I'm not a white identitarian, but I do think that American culture needs to be preserved. You know, you need to have, you know, people nationalized to your country, but even that's too edgy to say sometimes, which is fucking crazy. It's like, yeah, they shouldn't be using, you know, I think one of the clearest, you know, evidence of multiculturalism gone wrong is Sharia courts in the UK. That's fucking terrifying. And the worst part is that women don't know, like, English, you know, because they didn't have to, like, learn it. And so, like, they're getting beaten and shit, and all they can go to is the Sharia courts. So that's not really helping them now, is it? And so, you know, an MP or something says, you know, ooh, women should probably learn English. That'd be pretty good for you guys. Would recommend learning English. Not because I'm racist, but because you can't go to the, like, police if you can't speak English. Now, not too, well, they'll probably just get interpreters at that point. You know, I live in an area that's, I have, you know, there's a large insular Korean society here, and so it's like, uh-oh, you know. You know, they're not, you know, I know people who've lived here for 12 years. can speak English, just not super well. And that's, you know, that's worrying. And granted, they came here, you know, at like, you know, probably around 7. So it's a little bit after, like, your language, you know, learning skills have turned off a teeny bit. Learning English as a second language, especially when you learned Korean, is a little tricky. But the issue is that they don't have to. You know, I can, if I want to, I could always post, you know, shopping centers near me, and it's like, you know, a good like 75% of the signs are in Korean. And I know that sounds weird for people who are from around, you know, DC, because, you know, when you hear Virginia, you just hear, oh, I'm a hick. But like, you know, just outside of DC is pretty diverse. You know, you got some areas that are just full of like government contracting and like shit like SAIC, SIAC and shit. Yeah, they're just government contractors and stuff. And so, you know, you have a lot of jobs coming here, and you got diplomats. I knew some Indian diplomats, children, and they fucked me up, because they were like, I'm gonna go back to India, and I'm gonna go get, you know, I'm gonna become a diplomat. And I'm like, you know, you're the worst, right? And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, like, India's so corrupt. If you're a diplomat, you're just benefiting off of a whole bunch of people getting like exploited by the government. And they were totally cool with that, but they didn't want to admit it. And I'm not like moral fagging here, I just think that that's fucked up. And so with that, I think that this has been pretty neato. This game's pretty fun. I recommend it. Love that the game knows when you fucked up. It's one of my favorite parts. Oh, oh.
Hit the escape key if you need to change the mouse sensitivity.
The controls aren't inconsistent, but they are kind of fucking shit. Like, I don't know, just sometimes like he switches hands or something, like when spinning, and it just doesn't feel right. Also, the cauldron there is to protect his legs. That, you know, the creator of the game went on IGN, and that's what he said. So just protect his legs from falling. I recommend you get this game. You watch this and say, wow, he's shit. Fucking, I don't care if you torrent it. Get it. Try me. This game's so fucking hard. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope this content was fire.